Thank you for joining me for Journey to Easter. This is a trip through the various days of Holy Week as we prepare for this really important part of the Christian faith that is a tradition throughout the world. I'm Stephen Cat Perry, host of In Good Faith, and I'm so pleased to be speaking with Dr. Tyler Griffin today, an Associate Dean in Religious Education at Brigham Young University.
It is a pleasure to join you today.
Holy Week, some people are very familiar. It's just one of the rhythms of their worship. And for other people, it's like, well, I go to church on Easter and we celebrate that, but what exactly is Holy Week? And so we're going through day by day, starting with Palm Sunday. But some of the lesser known days are this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before we get to the Last Supper and the crucifixion. But Jesus was doing a lot during this time.
Absolutely. He lived his life, you could say, in crescendo. It's fascinating to me to look at the overview of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels. They're telling the stories of Jesus' life, and yet somewhere between 33 and 40% of their column space is devoted to the last 8 days, starting on Palm Sunday, ending with Easter, Sunday to Sunday, 8 days. It tells you, they're signaling to us, hey, everything else is pointing you forward to this. So pay attention.
And because we kind of know how the story ends, it's easy to forget what it was like for the apostles, the disciples, who he was teaching and trying to say, I will be leaving you for, and they didn't get it.
No, they didn't. They were devastated when he's betrayed and arrested and tried and then crucified. All of these promises that they thought he was going to come and fulfill their, what we call the messianic expectations, and all of a sudden he's dead and he's in a tomb and their world seems to have collapsed around them. And it's only after that they're reminded, he told you this was going to happen, but you just didn't follow it.
When we look at Holy Week, we hear really interesting phrases like Fig Monday, Spy Wednesday. I mean, they've been given names that are not familiar to some of us. So I wonder if you'd walk us through that.
Absolutely. So Fig Monday is that title. It'll come because the very first thing he does in Mark's gospel, as he's coming into the temple before he cleanses the temple, is he's hungry. He wants some breakfast, and he comes up to a fig tree. And it shows all the signs of having figs, but there's no fruit. And he curses it, which is, it's one of those ironic moments in his life where everybody thinks, Jesus, that wasn't very Christ-like. Because we want him to fit into this nice little box that we've made for him that's always showing just love and mercy and grace and kindness. But he's about to go in and cleanse the temple, and it's this little object lesson of, if you show that you've got the signs of righteousness but no fruits of righteousness, he doesn't seem to have a lot of patience for that. And so then he goes in and he cleanses the temple, and keeping in mind that it's not going into a building, it's going into a huge plaza. This temple structure, it's built up on the Temple Mount. You can fit 26 American football fields on top of Temple Mount with all these porticos, and it's going to be loaded with people. And
it's the Passover season.
It's Passover. You've got hundreds of thousands of people in Jerusalem, and he is single-handedly going to get rid of all of those money changers and the sellers of animals who have brought their trade up onto the Temple Mount platform. It's a miracle.
As they leave that day, they pass this fig tree.
And it is withered. And they are amazed at how quickly it withered, which, by the way, it bookends that cleansing of the temple, that he stood up with power and authority against evil, and it stepped down. It was cleansed. These are object lessons for Jesus' relationship with us today as well, that Paul later on in the New Testament is going to say, what? Know ye not? Ye are the temple of our God. It's that idea of the cleansing of the temple is more than brick and mortar being swept of money changers. It's letting Jesus Christ come into my life.
The Tuesday of the week. Now, if I remember correctly, we believe he's staying with Lazarus Mary and Martha in Bethany, and then going into Jerusalem each day. So he kind of has a home base there. And so all of these activities are coming and going for the first part of the week.
Yes, absolutely. So it's fascinating because after he cleansed the temple on Monday, now he's bringing down the ire of the Sadducees and the full Sanhedrin upon him, because this is hitting them where it hurts financially, and a show of power that they don't like. And so the next part of the account, especially if you go with Matthew's account, because he kind of gives us the best walkthrough of those events on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it's kind of hard to separate out what happened on Monday, what happened on Tuesday, what happened on Wednesday. That's why they often get kind of muddied over and clouded and lumped together. But you get the Matthew 21, where the chief priests, the leaders of the Jews, come to him in the temple while he was teaching, and they question him in a big way. They say, "By what authority do you do these things? Who gave you this authority?" And it's interesting that Jesus never, in the New Testament accounts, when somebody's tempting him or backing him into a corner or trying to trap him, he never seems to directly respond to their question with a simple answer. He either turns them back to the Old Testament, asks them a question about what they interpret, or he shares a parable or couches his answer in a symbolic metaphor. And in this case, they asked him, "By what authority do you do these things?" And he responds by saying, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll ask you a question. If you can answer it, then I'll answer yours. The baptism of John, was it of God or of men?" At which point you can picture them huddling together saying, "Oh no, if we say it was of God, then he's going to say, 'Why didn't you get baptized by him?' And if we say it's of men, then the people are going to hate us because they love John. We're stuck." So their trap now springs upon them, and they come back and say, "We can't tell." And he says, "Okay, well, neither tell I you by what authority I do these things." But, and the next word there in verse 28 is, "But what think ye?" And he then launches into this story as if to say, I'm not going to make it clear to them what the answer to that question is, but I think my disciples need to know by what authority I do these things. So he tells this parable of the two sons, and one saying, "I will go," and doesn't go, and the other saying, "I won't go, I don't want to go," and he does go. And neither of them look like Jesus, unless you read it in the Greek. And the first son says, "It is not my will," but afterward he changed and he did his Father's will.
And then what we know about Wednesday.
So Wednesday is this interesting day. We call it, in general Christian terms, we call it Spy Wednesday. The reason for that is because that is the traditional day that is given for Judas to go and make the final arrangements with the Sanhedrin to betray Jesus. There's a feast where Jesus is eating with Mary and Martha and Lazarus and many of his apostles, including Judas Iscariot. And Mary comes in and anoints his feet with the expensive spikenard ointment. If you now combine John's account with this version of the timing, Judas is very upset, and he says, "Why wasn't this sold and given to the poor for 300 pence, which is over a year's salary for a working laborer in that day?" That's a significant amount of money. And Jesus defends her by saying, "Let her alone. She hath done a good thing," in John's account. Now, if you come back to Matthew, Mark, and Luke's account, the next thing that happens is Judas is conspiring with the Sanhedrin of how to betray Jesus, and agreeing to the cost of 30 pieces of silver.
Well, I love that it's not just that betrayal, but we get to read about the anointing. And when Jesus says that wherever this gospel is proclaimed, this act will be shared. I love that you shared it, because
Yes.
it just you're fulfilling a prophecy there.
We'll live on.
But also remembering that honor. And I think he says she's anointing me for my burial.
That's right.
So another time that he's saying what will be happening. I'm really grateful to you, Dr. Tyler Griffin, Dr. Griffin is an Associate Dean in Religious Education here at Brigham Young University. We hope you'll listen to each of the segments of our Journey to Easter series going through Holy Week. And you can find that online at the In Good Faith podcast. We hope you'll subscribe. And BYU Broadcasting produces In Good Faith. We're grateful for that support. Thank you again for speaking with me, Tyler.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.